Hi, I'm Sarah from The Upcoming. Such a pleasure to be able to speak to you today.
It's
Um,
very nice to meet you, Sarah.
Nice to meet you. If you could kick off with a brief introduction to All Is Vanity, what can audiences expect if they watch it?
So, All Is Vanity is a really passionate indie that begins as a satire of the hipster fashion industry in London and then morphs into something more unexpected over the course of its runtime.
And what did you think when you first read the script? I mean, you must have felt a bit like the audiences when they watch the film. You thought you were reading one thing and then it quickly turns into something else. So what was that experience like for you? And what really jumped out to you thinking this would be a great project to be involved with?
Well, it because when you work in film, you often find yourself seeing, if not the same story over and over again, but very similar stories over and over again. To receive a script when you genuinely don't know what's going to happen next is exhilarating, and that's what the film gave me reading it for the first time. I hope it's what it gives audiences seeing it for the first time, where you start to realize that what you expected isn't what's going to happen and isn't what the film is going to be, and then that continues through to the end, I hope. And I saw that and I was like, there's a rocket here and I want to get on it.
Yeah. And Marcos, he's an Argentinian director, I believe, working in
Mm-hmm.
English for the first time with
Mm-hmm.
this film, and it's his feature debut. So, did that represent any kind of risk from your perspective, or what was it like? And, kind of going on this journey, I guess, together.
So that's a really good question. I spent several years of my childhood in South America, in Brazil, not in Argentina, and so I had something of an understanding with Marcos beforehand, just because of that shared background. But absolutely, I wanted to meet him for coffee and talk to him. But once you have a conversation with Marcos, you realize very quickly that you're in incredibly safe hands.
Mm.
And while it is his first time working in English, and I think it's worth noting that although there was a lot of improvisation on set, the
Mm.
vast majority of the dialogue in the final film is essentially word for word what was in his script, and I think that's a testament to him because it's not even his second language. I think it's like his fourth, and I think that's very impressive. But yeah, once you have a conversation with him and you realize how brilliant he is, uh, any sort of risk goes away, and you just want to get started.
Mm. And tell us a bit about your character, the photographer. I mean, obviously, it becomes kind of a dual role as things go
Mhm.
on, but certainly, thinking of the first half. I mean, he looks like he must have been quite fun to play, just rubbing
He
everybody up
was.
the wrong way.
He
We
was.
recognise that person, particularly from that world. So, what was it like preparing to
So
play him and
much.
playing him?
Well, that's the highest compliment you could have paid me, that you recognize him, because that was very much the goal. I wanted to. There's a wonderful Albert Brooks interview where he talks about how his favorite performances are performances that get you 80% of the way there, because he wants that 20% to be able to go, I know that person. He wants that little bit of space to be like, oh, it's just like my uncle or whatever. And in this case, I very much wanted to create an amalgamation of various, not necessarily just photographers, but a particular kind of creative power that exists in a variety of different industries. And so I just drew from different versions of that to try and create an amalgamation of someone pretty unbearable, and where I hope that anyone, whether it be the fashion industry or the film industry or anyone who's just had a difficult boss, really can look at him and go, oh God, yeah, I know that guy. So.
And what was it like? Because it's very stripped back as a film. It's kind of low budget in the sense of almost a single location. And the dialogue, like you say, I don't know how much of it was improvised on set. But so, what was
Mhm.
that experience like? Because it feels like the space is enlarged, kind of with the creativity with which Marcos has filmed it, and
Mhm.
how the narrative keeps kind of complicating and complicating. So it seems very
Mhm.
simple to begin with, but again, it gets more complex.
Yeah, so it really helps when the director has such a clear understanding of what he wants, because obviously with a project like this, where there's so many intersecting elements and there's so much going on at any given moment, to have that clarity at all times, where if you ever start to get a little bit at sea, or if you're ever not sure what's going on, you know that you can just turn to someone and they'll be like this, and you just know where you need. So that structure means that within that structure, we could then be incredibly free to play. And so in some ways it felt like a playground, because Marcos created an environment where there was so much trust and camaraderie and playfulness that it was just a joy.
And I guess it sort of seems logical, because the film is a bit, about photography and creativity, but like each frame just looks, so well put together and so perfect. And was that also apparent to you in the filming of it? Was that so, when you saw the film back and realized just how well it had been done?
So Murat, our director of photography, is, in my opinion, a genius. Like, he's spectacular, and that was very apparent on set. I don't watch my takes back when filming. I just don't find it useful. I prefer to just kind of see me after it's all been done. But I will happily look at other footage of what's going on, and especially in this, because I was playing a photographer, I was paying particular attention to a lot of the photography that was happening on set, just out of curiosity. And it was immediately apparent how talented Murat is. And so I guess the joy that I take at watching the film back and how good it looks isn't so much surprise as it is like, yeah, he's really good.
And how was it working with your fellow cast? I mean, it looks like you must have had a lot of fun on set as well. Or were there any really challenging moments? I don't know.
I think making a film is in and of itself challenging, but fortunately, I certainly didn't feel like there was anything. Maybe they all hated me, but I certainly didn't feel as though there was any particular problem. I mean, we all still talk to each other, and we shot it in the great before the pandemic. But yeah, like Yassine is one of my closest friends. I saw Chris last week. We had a great time.
And the other thing that I was just thinking when you were talking about the fact, the English, it's not only his first language, but also, he knows other languages. The fact that there's sort of the sense of humor, which, and then sort of feels very British, very, very captured, that kind of feeling of, slight awkwardness, or, those conversations that sort of, there's like tensions brewing. So that seems impressive, considering he's not British.
It's really incredible, isn't it? Like, the way that he's captured it, because it's true, there's such a particular to the bone kind of humor to it that we associate so strongly with a particular kind of British comedy, and yeah, it's incredible. Like, I don't know what to tell you. The man's a genius. Like, that's all I've got. Like, because I to do it, it's hard enough to do that when it's your first language.
Yeah. And what do you hope people take away from watching it? Because of course, depending on how you're going to what level you're going to read into it, it's very much about the artistic process, about that desire to create something meaningful. And then maybe the more you work at something, the harder it is to nail it down, or the further it seems from your grasp. So, what would you, if you were trying to sort of capture, what the theme would be, or the underlying kind of message, or whatever, what would you say it was?
I'd say, for me, because I think that everyone will have their own read of it, but for me, I think the underlying message is it's okay to let things be what they are. And I think that while the film does have a lot of dialogue and is very specific and very well planned, I also think that it's okay to let it be an experience as much as a thesis, if that makes sense. And so that is kind of the message of the film, in my opinion, is it's all well and good to try and nail something down, as you're saying, but it's also important to know how to let something be.
And I'm almost out of time, but, coming to your own career, you've already worked alongside some incredible actors and actresses, Meryl Streep and Hugh Grant and so
I've
on
been
and
very
so forth.
fortunate.
What have been some of the highlights for you so far?
Well, Meryl Streep, as you mentioned, is graciousness personified, and I hope if I ever attain a fraction of the success that she so deservedly has, I hope that I keep the graciousness that she has in every way that she is with everyone. I was lucky enough to work with Stephen Frears. I thought he was a magnificent presence on set. I've been very lucky. I've been very lucky in that most of the projects that I've been involved in, I have taken something from them that I will cherish, and this one's no exception.
And you've also worked on stage. Do you see like a real contrast in kind of the approach and the experience, or is it something you like to flip between?
Yeah, I adore jumping back and forth. I love stage. There's a huge contrast. I think the way that I usually describe it is the film is kind of like sculpture in the sense that you're crafting something meticulously and trying to build it, whereas stage is a competitive sport. You know, what happens on the field is what happens on the field at any given moment. And so they're both incredibly exciting, but in very different ways. And yeah, I love the theater. I think I'd say the best way to think about it is that sense that like once you go out on stage, the fact that anything can happen from that moment on is what makes theater so exhilarating, both as a performer and as a member of the audience. And those moments of magic that where you know that you're in a space where something is happening that is just now and just for us. That's an incredibly special thing. And likewise, not likewise, and conversely, on film, what you have is you know that you're creating something where that fleeting moment of magic can be seen long after you are gone, hopefully.
And just very quickly, can you tell us what you might be working on next after this project? And if you do have, a real bucket list, I don't know, director or actor or story that you'd like to tell on screen?
Oh my goodness. Yeah, so I was lucky enough to do Masters of the Air for Apple TV, and Amblin. So I'm in that, and I'm very excited for that to come out because that was a wonderful experience. I'm also filming an indie called Dog Run, which is about myself and the bonding experience I have with a dog, and it's so much fun because it's just me hanging out with a dog. Love it. It's a very serious subject matter, but as an actor's experience, it's wonderful. And people I'd love to work with, my God, the list is long. Ava DuVernay, I'd love to work with her. I'd love to work with Denis Villeneuve. I think Amy Sherman Palladino is one of the great living screenwriters. I'd love to do anything. She's written performers. I mean, Florence Pugh, Emily Blunt. Like the number of people who are exciting just goes on and on. I'd love to work with everyone. Everyone makes such cool stuff.
Well, I'd love to hear more of the list, but unfortunately I'm out of time. But thank you so much for sharing all that with us, and I can't wait for everyone else to see All Is Vanity. Thank you. Lovely to chat to you.
Thank you very much. It was lovely to chat to you too.
Thanks. Bye. See you.